I honestly can't believe one of these costumes costs more than a used car. At the lower end of the scale, you're looking at $205. Mid-range is about $2,235, but at the very top, it's a whopping $11,682. At every troop, every shopping centre, every hospital visit, and every fan event, someone walks up and asks the same question. How much did that costume cost? And it doesn't matter what you're wearing, a Stormtrooper, Vader, clone or a Mando, they always ask. And for years, the honest answer has been, well, it depends, because nobody had actually put the numbers together. So I ran a survey. I asked 5FS members to submit their costumes, the year they built or bought them, and what they spent. And I've inflation adjusted everything to $2026, so a costume built in 2010 still sits on equal footing with one built last year. And here's what we're going to answer today. What's the cheapest way into the 5FS? And I mean genuinely cheap. Which costumes do most members actually build and what do they really cost? And what is the most expensive build in our entire survey? Because I promise you, it's not what you think. And that last one, it genuinely surprised me. We'll get there. Now let's start at the bottom. If you've been sitting on the fence about joining the 5FS because you don't know if you can afford it, here's your honest answer. The cheapest costume in our survey is a Jawa. The average across two responses was $410. Now the low end of that range was $205, was a homemade build, bought a secondhand robe and made the mask. The high end was $614 was purchased. And that right there is the buy versus make story in a single costume, and it's a thread you'll see running through this entire video. But maybe the Jawa isn't your vibe, and that's fair, because there are a few options right across the entire tier. The Narkina 5 Inmate, that's the prisoner from Andor, came in at $498. The Imperial crew suits, scanning crew and the bridge crew averaged $635 and $648. The Imperial Security Bureau officer, very Star Wars, averages $637, with the lowest build in our data coming in at $414. So if someone tells you the 5FS is only for people with money to burn, show them this section. You can get approved for under $500. And these aren't costume party outfits either, these are screen accurate CRL approved 5FS builds. The door is more open than most people think. But most people don't come to the 5FS to build an entry level costume. So what do the most popular builds actually cost? And this is where the real data gets interesting. I pulled the 5FS membership numbers, how many approved costumes exist in each category globally, to find out which builds are actually the most popular. And the answer might surprise you, the most popular costume in the 5FS is not the Stormtrooper. It's the TIE Pilot, with 5,507 approved TIE Pilot costumes worldwide. The Stormtrooper comes in second at 4,738. So what does the most popular build in the 5FS actually cost? Well, our survey average was $1,492. It's also one of the most consistent categories in the whole dataset, less than $1,000 between the cheapest and the most expensive. You know roughly what you're getting into with a TIE Pilot build. And it might not be a coincidence that it's the number one. The flight suit, the boots, the belt, the gloves, those same pieces carry across the reserve pilot, the Imperial bridge crew, and the scanning crew. One build, multiple costumes. And that versatility probably has a lot to do with why 5,500 people have chosen it as their first or their next 5FS approved costume. The Stormtrooper on the other hand, that's a very different story. The New Hope stunt Stormtrooper, the classic white armour, and in my opinion the most iconic costume in all of science fiction, averages $2,235. But here's the thing, there's a massive range. $816 at the low end, $4,716 at the top. Same costume, same CRL, same approval standard. But nearly a 6 times difference in price. Why? Kit quality. Where you source the armour, whether you buy a complete suit or piece it together, whether you modify it yourself or pay a professional. The same Stormtrooper can cost $800 or nearly $5,000. We'll come back to why that matters in a minute. Because that gap, that enormous gap, is actually the key to understanding the really expensive builds later on. Rounding out the top 3 most popular categories, the Imperial officer, with an average cost in our survey of $1,392. But there's a wide range again, $414 at the bottom, $2,560 for a Director's Krennic at the top. A few other bread and butter numbers worth calling out. Scout Troopers average $2,327, Clone Troopers and Commanders average $2,915, Snowtroopers are $1,829. But now it's time to get into the part of the data where the numbers get really uncomfortable. But before we head into those big numbers, why does the same Stormtrooper range from $800 to nearly $5,000? A budget Stormtrooper might be a low quality kit, second-hand or assembled as is, whereas a premium one might be hand-trimmed, hand-strapped, custom-fitted with a hero spec helmet that alone costs more than the entire budget build. And then you scale that up to a Darth Vader, a costume with 50 plus separate components, and suddenly $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 starts to make sense. Our Boba Fett data covers 5 builds across multiple variants. The average, $7,303. And the highest in that group, $11,152, and that was for a Return of the Jedi Hero build purchased in 2014. So that's what inflation does. The original purchase was $8,000. In today's money, it's well over $11,000. Here's one that catches people off guard. Kylo Ren. You might not think him as a particularly expensive build, but he came in at $6,449. The robes, the mask, the crossguard saber, it adds up faster than you expect. And then there's Vader, with 5 responses across the film variants. On average, $7,916. The most expensive single Vader in our data is a Return of the Jedi build completed in 2025. Fully made, every piece sourced or scratch built to screen accuracy. $10,853. And yet, that's not the most expensive costume in the survey. I told you it wasn't what you'd think. Let's go back to those 3 numbers from the top of the video. $205. That's the homemade Jawa. Bought the robe second hand, made the mask. Fully 501st approved, built in 2025. $2,235. That's the average New Hope stunt Stormtrooper, the most iconic costume in Star Wars, worn by the second most popular category in the 501st. And finally, at a whopping $11,682, it's not Vader, and it's not Boba Fett. It's Bo-Katan from The Mandalorian Season 2, built in 2022. Full fabric suit, custom fabricated armor, screen accurate helmet. The most expensive build in the entire dataset. It's a costume that most people walking past it at a troop wouldn't even clock it as expensive. And that's the thing about the 501st, the price, it's not written on the outside. The person in the $11,000 Bo-Katan is standing next to the person in the $400 ISB officer. And they're both equally approved, equally part of the garrison. And here's the real answer to how much did that cost. Entry tier, $205 to $1,000. Mid-range, you're looking at $1,000 to $4,000. Premium is $4,000 to $8,000. And top end is $8,000 and above. And every single one of those builds went through the same CRL approval. But here's what's key, the number doesn't define the costume, it defines the path you took to get there. The survey is still open, so if you're a member of the 501st and you want to add your costume to the dataset, the link is in the description below. The more responses we get, the better the picture gets, and I'd love to revisit this data in a future video. And if there's enough interest, I think it'd be fun to do the same video for the Rebel Legion. Same idea, different costumes, probably equally surprising numbers. If you have any questions about the 501st Legion, feel free to put a comment on the video. I read all of them and answer as many as I can. If you found this video useful, a like and a subscribe goes a long way. It's how the algorithm knows to show this to the next person who's wondering if they can afford to join. And if you want to find out if the 501st Legion is for you, then I'll load up the next video for you here. And as always, may those costuming gods be with you.